I want to make sure I get on your prayer list. That was that was a great, great, great prayer. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, good morning. Martha and I are glad to be here for several reasons. One, we got to spend the night with Oliver and Manon last night. That's her brother that lives at Fountain Hill. He's the last of the 5 siblings to be still living in Fountain Hill. But anyway, I'm going to regress just a little bit because I'm so proud to be married to Martha, and it's just a great blessing for me. So 45 years ago, I was a principal in Cabot, Arkansas. And I would say I was a faithful member of the Cabot Church of Christ and everything. I don't know what the elders or the preacher or whatever might say, but I was real involved there. And so one Sunday night, we had a presentation by a mission group that had gone to the Caribbean to do some medical mission work with one of the islands in the Caribbean. Well, they invited the doctors who were on that trip to also come and be with them that evening, and then after church, they were going to have a chili supper for the folks that went on the mission trip at the preacher's house. About the 3rd or 4th slide of that presentation, there was a doll, a beautiful Christian lady sitting there with a stethoscope around her neck, surrounded by the people that were recipients of the medical missions trip. I think they baptized several people during that time. They would set up a booth and set up an area where you could come and study if you wanted to before you received your medical exam and all that. So after church, I went up to the preacher's wife and I looked over, and Martha wasn't introduced as one of the physicians on the trip because she was a senior in med school. She hadn't graduated yet, so they didn't introduce her as Dr. Bush, it's Dr. Griffin. But anyway, so I walked up to the preacher's wife, and I said, "Mary," and she said, "Yeah," and I looked over at Martha, and she looked over there with me, and she looked back, and I said, "I really like chili." And she said, "She's a really nice girl." And I was taken back by that. I had a reputation in Cabot as being a pretty tough principal, to be honest with you. We had some discipline problems and stuff, and I was old school. I tried to handle those. So anyway, I had a reputation maybe of being a little bit of a gunslinger as a principal or whatever, so we still believed in paddling kids and expelling them and all that and everything. But I was taken back a little bit. Well, her husband, the preacher, was standing right here having a conversation with somebody. So he got me by the shirt sleeve and pulled me over a little bit, and he said, "You know how to get to our house?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You're welcome to come and have chili with us." Martha and I were married 6 months later. So anyway, and that's just been, I guess, one of the greatest blessings of my life. But on our 3rd time to be together, she had invited me to come to Little Rock, and she was going to fix supper. Supper. I don't know where the dinner deal got moved to the end of the train. It still confuses me. But anyway, to go to supper, invited me to come to supper before church. We were going to eat and then go to church. She was going to church in Little Rock and everything. So she fixed some spaghetti with some spaghetti sauce, no meatballs. I didn't realize at the time on how thin budget she was actually on, and she was fixing a salad for us to eat with our spaghetti. I can't believe I'm telling y'all this. I don't know y'all well enough to tell y'all this. But anyway, she opened the refrigerator and she said, "Oh my goodness, all the maters are ruined." And I went, "All the maters are ruined." And I thought, I'm in love, man. I mean, I was raised on a cotton and dairy farm in Mount Vernon, Arkansas, but it was the ice box that she said, "I'm going to go to the ice box." And I went, "Ice box?" I think she's dated about 60 or 70 years there, and get something else for the salad. And anyway, I think that's when I fell in love. So anyway, but I guess most of y'all or some of y'all know the Griffin family from Fountain Hill. And so anyway, they attended church here a lot and gospel meetings and things. So as things progressed, I ended up as a minister in Dallas, Texas, with several people on staff. We had several ministers. It was a large church in Dallas, and the elders, the shepherds there, decided that they wanted to hire somebody to be the day-to-day kind of operation administrative person. Long story, but anyway, I got selected to do that. And give you a real simple definition of what my job was. My job was to attend the elders' meetings, unless it was somebody that wanted to meet just with them for prayer, or it was the meeting where they also evaluated me. So I didn't get to come to that meeting until after the meeting. But anyway, but my job at that church basically was to attend the elders' meetings, the shepherds' meetings, and take really detailed notes, kind of be their secretary kind of person. But my job was to implement whatever they decided they wanted to do, whether it was hiring a youth minister, getting a computer system, paving the parking lot, organizing an evangelistic gospel meeting. Whatever they decided to do, they felt like they needed somebody to keep the ball rolling, and that was really my job. One of my responsibilities was to visit the mission points of the Highland Oaks Church and to evaluate, and I would take a shepherd or two with me to go. And our largest work was in Nairobi, Kenya, and a Harding graduate 60 years ago, as soon as he graduated from Harding, went to Nairobi and established a church in the middle of Nairobi, Kenya, and started developing a trade school. And the government approved of him getting some property and doing this trade school to help, but it was a Christian trade school. So my job was to go and visit that location. Martha coordinated a phenomenal medical missions trip to Nairobi. And I don't know the details. Martha's got a mic there. She could tell you about how many people they saw and all that and everything. But it was just that people were lined up literally for a quarter of a mile to get to see the doctors and all. Well, Berkeley Hackett, the person that was there, said to me, my job was to sit at a table, and somebody would come in and we'd have a big eye chart up there. And I just start handing them glasses out of a big pile of glasses that the Lions Club in Dallas, Texas donated to us. I mean, it was a Foot Locker full of glasses that people had, and we tried to kind of arrange them to where you could see a little bit and then you couldn't see it all, and some of them looked like magnifying glasses. But anyway, so my job was just to get them into a pair of glasses where they could just read the chart that was up there. Not necessarily the bottom line of the chart, but just the chart, just trying to help them to get some glasses where they could read and see. And that type thing. And there were a couple of people helping me. To be honest with you, I really didn't have that much to really do. I mean, I ended up bringing the people in. Anyway, so Berkeley came up to me and he said, well, how do you like Nairobi, Kenya? And I said, Berkeley, honestly, I'm not an urban guy, believe it or not. Even though we're in Dallas and we're going to the real large church, I'm just a rural guy, and so I don't really like it here any more than I do Dallas, Texas. And we laughed about it a little bit. And he said, well, day after tomorrow, I've got a Land Rover going out to a rural village, and we're going to take some beans, rice, all the water we can carry, and some hard candy and stuff for the kids, and I want you to go on that trip and go out there with Danson, our driver, and everything. Well, I was really excited about it, and I'm glad that there's some kind of elderly people in here, some gray tigers that are in here, because the older you get, for you younger people, it's a little bit harder to control your emotions when you get a little bit older. So I'm going to try not to cry or, get too involved emotionally in what I'm going to share with you, but it's still just a greatest blessing in our lives. But so I'll never forget getting in that Land Rover and taking about 2.5 hours to go probably what would take an hour on a really good road and everything. The rural guys around here that drive the big 4-wheel trucks and everything would pay money to drive from Nairobi out to Kikaguni, the rural village we went to. It was hard, and you didn't even know there was a dirt road, and anyway, so we got within about a mile driving along the ridge, and I looked down below and I said, Danson, what is that? And he said, well, that's the church. That's the Church of Christ down there, and the preachers, they call their preachers evangelists. But anyway, the evangelist lives down there too and everything. And before we got there, there were at least, try not to exaggerate too much, but there were at least 12 or 15 kids from ages 9 or 10 to 14 or 15 years old that ran out barefooted on a dirt road type deal and ran along beside us all the way back to the village. And so anyway, after staying there that afternoon, Danson got ready to go back, and I said, Danson, I'm not going back with you. He said, Tommy, you go back with me or Berkeley's going to kill me when I get back to the deal. And I said, you tell him to come back and get me Saturday morning and bring Martha and Glenn with you. And so that started a whole big deal. So a little over a decade ago, the Highland Oaks Church ended their support to Berkeley in Nairobi, and Berkeley called me and asked me if we would help keep supporting him. And I said, Berkeley, I would like to support the work out in that rural village at Kikaguni. And he said, Tommy, that would be unbelievable. So we had been on a couple of mission trips. I knew Bernard. And so that started this journey that I'm going to share with y'all today. But okay, so this is a picture of Bernard and Georgina. They are the couple that started the Kikaguni Church of Christ in rural, under-resourced Kenya. And one of the first things that we did, that raising money and helping them, was to get a catch tank where they could capture rainwater, because water is everything. There is no wells there at this time, and they were having to go, I'll show you in a minute. But anyway, that's a picture of Bernard and Georgina. Berkeley was a street preacher. He would go out almost every day to a different location and preach under a tree or whatever. And this area where he was going, where Bernard lived, Bernard started showing up and listening to his lessons, but he was kind of in the background. And every time that Berkeley would get through, well, Bernard had disappeared. He was gone. So about the third or fourth time he did that, Bernard was waiting for him, and he said, "I study the Bible all the time." And he said, "Are you the New Testament church? Are you the Church of Christ?" And Berkeley said, "You better believe it, brother." He said, "Yes, we are." And he says, "I need to be baptized." Wow. So after the baptism, he had to take him a place where they had water. There was no water. It's a long story. I'm not going to go into all that. So after Berkeley sat down with Bernard and studied with him a couple of 2 or 3 hours, he said, "Bernard, I'm going to start giving you a little bit of help, a little bit of support to get you some Bibles and some material." And he said, "You need to start preaching." And Bernard was like, "Oh, Berkeley." He said, "Bernard, pray about it." And he said, "You know the Bible as well as anybody that I know." I mean, I went to Harding, sat under the professors, and he said, you know, but anyway, short story longer, Bernard became the evangelist for the Kikaguni Church. This is a picture of Georgina, his wife. For several years, they would get members that would come from far and near, and they would encourage them to walk in the creek bottom and pick up as big of a rock as you could carry and pile them up in a pile, literally over a period of, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, 3 years, 2 or 3 years. And that's how they built their church, one brick at a time. And they were actually featured in the Christian Chronicle magazine back in the day. So to give you a little perspective on where Kenya is on the east coast of Africa, not the west coast of Africa. The west coast of Africa participated in the slave trade back starting 300 years ago, but there's just a certain amount of animosity, hostility and stuff in some of the western countries. The eastern part of Africa, Nairobi, there is none of that. They did not participate ancestrally in the slave trade. There's no animosity. They are the most friendly, receptive people that you will meet. So just to give you a little geographical perspective, this is where Nairobi is. And then there's another area that's showing you where our mission point, our primary mission point is Kikaguni. Now, it doesn't look like it's that far away, but the terrain, it's improved. They have a road now that you can drive on pretty consistently and everything, but back then it was just a real dirt path, really. So I want you to look at this picture because this has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with Martha. I would just say before we adopted this rural village to start giving them help, this was a pretty typical picture. The wife is having to go to the fields early in the morning and work. The dad has more than likely passed away with AIDS or has ran away or whatever, and this is the grandparents raising their grandchildren. And poverty, but that's kind of the situation that it was. So one of the very first things that Martha and I started doing was to start a feeding program. I told Bernard, I said, Bernard, we're going to set up a system to where we can wire money to you, and Martha and I are going to pledge this much a week, this much a month, this much annually to help you. So this is the kind of the picture. This is the slum that's in Nairobi, and but the country still is very under-resourced, very poor country. So one of the first things that we did is we started a Sunday morning feeding program for the children so that they would get at least one really good, nutritious meal a week, and then they would take whatever they could carry back home or whatever. And I'm going to say something to you, and I don't know if it's going to be communicated properly or not, so Paul, you and some others can ask me some questions about it, but I got accused early on by somebody that surprised me when they said, I don't think it's right for y'all to do what you're doing. And I was just kind of shocked a little bit, because I'd asked them for some money. I asked them for some support. And they said, you're just doing this to attract them so you can make them non-instrumental members of the Church of Christ. And I was floored by that. I said, Jeff, I'm doing this because of the last part of Matthew 25, starting about verse 40. It talks about our responsibility to help those who are in need, who are less fortunate than us. There's about 12 scriptures, 12 verses there that describe that and talk about that. And I said, I'm doing this because I care about the people and because they're hungry. And so anyway, well, the feeding program kept growing, and so we would have a potluck Sunday every Sunday. We still do. This is a recent picture. But on Sundays, everybody brings whatever they've got, and then we supplement it by buying maybe some meat, buying some soup, different things to make sure there's enough for everybody to have something to eat. That's kind of where we started. The area around where Kikaguni is, it's either feast or famine. It's either kind of flooding a little bit, or it's so dry that you really can't hardly grow anything or do very much. This is a picture looking in one direction and then in the other direction from the location. This is a couple of different pictures showing a couple of different things. The bottom right-hand corner is our regular feeding program, but the picture to the top left, I'm getting these out of context a little bit. This is part of our Christmas, where we try to bring a lot of food, a lot of things together for people to help. But I want you to notice the picture in the bottom left-hand corner for a particular reason. The government of Kenya started placing so much trust in Bernard and the Church of Christ in that area that they started bringing relief food to that church for their members to help give it out to the people that were coming, so that somebody didn't steal it or somebody didn't take it from somebody else. It's a huge honor. But anyway, that's a picture for there. Two quick pictures. One, the picture to the left is the location where after a few years we decided that we had to drill a borehole or a well, and that's the location. The picture to the right shows you the person that made money, which I don't it wasn't unreasonable, but it was, and he would actually come and sell water, and this is just one of his boroughs. He actually had 3 of them. He would go to a place about 12 miles away, fill up those tanks with the boroughs, and come back. And I know this doesn't sound like a lot of money in U.S. currency, but it would probably cost between, I don't know, $2 and $3, sometimes $4, to fill up the baptistry just to have baptisms with the water. Now the water, the water was not wasted at all. Everybody would bring their buckets or whatever and get the water out of the baptistry. But anyway, so to this rural area, water was everything. So about a decade ago, I started raising money. I don't mean I started raising money. We started raising money to try to get enough money for a borehole, for a well. And we had one person who said, raise what you can, and I'll make up the difference. And I said, you're looking at over $40,000. And they said, I don't care. So anyway, the structure to the left is necessary. That is an enclosure to where you put the diesel motor, the pump, and all that and everything for the water, because you can't just leave your structure and everything out in the open, because it will be stolen. It'll be theft. And it's not necessarily somebody that's evil or whatever. It's just that somebody will steal it, to sell it, to make money, to feed their kids. It's not that I'm not justifying the thievery, but I'm saying you've got to secure whatever you do. The borehole there, a little over about 10 years ago, completely revolutionized this rural community. To the left are a couple of the elders from the Romance Church getting their first big water tank. You saw that early on with Bernard and Georgina, but then they're laying pipe to do drip irrigation, and our mission exploded. I guess that's true. But to this day, they are able to have very successful gardening, drip irrigation, and I'll try to make this as brief as possible, but part of the deal is that these people want to work. They want to be involved. They want to be active. And so you'll have, somebody said, do y'all need a tractor? And I said, no, we don't need a tractor. We've got 3 people in one hoe, so they're all lined up to work. They want to work, so it's given them something that they feel good about. They feel a sense of accomplishment there. But they are growing some of the most incredible gardens now, and we feed the members of the church. Yes, we do, but we try to provide as much for the community as possible. And so has the church grown because of their kindness, because of them sharing? When we have a medical clinic, or we have an overage of food, or we give free drinking water. You can come twice a week, and anything you can carry, you can fill up. We're not going to be able to drip. Y'all is better than anybody that a well will run dry if you just keep it pumping all the time, so we got to be careful about that. But anything you can bring, plastic containers, I thought of something really funny, but so the kids there learn to walk sooner than a lot of kids learn to walk, because that way their parent can give them a plastic container. Anybody that can fill it. That's a joke. That's not really true. But they'll bring their kids. Everybody brings. But anyway, but the harvest has been abundant, and there have been a lot of people that have been trained in gardening, and I'll try to get past that a little bit, but I'm just trying to emphasize the borehole. They have 12 Singer pump sewing machines.
The old treadle.
What?
The old treadle.
Yeah, the old what?
The treadle that you mashed up
The
and down
treadle, the
when you were a
treadle.
little girl.
Martha, that's the sewing, they got the same sewing machine now that Martha had when she was a kid, and she was making her, she'll kill me for telling you all this, when she was making her dresses out of feed sacks. Let that sink in just a little bit. On the right is a computer technology center that we use for the kids, that we try to teach them skills and computer skills and all. And then a few years ago, we started raising more money. We had there's another congregation besides you all here that have given us some support. And so we started doing a poultry deal. I did not know until we got this deal recently that it's the Tommy and Martha Poultry.
We got a chicken house named after us.
What?
We have a chicken house named after
We have a chicken house named after us. How about that? How many of y'all have a chicken house named after you? But I don't really have the time to go into a lot of detail, but growing the chickens has produced protein for the eggs. It's produced work for some of the people that are there. And when the chickens get older, they produce, where you can have meat. We've also started raising some milk goats, some goats. This keeps growing a little bit. This has grown a lot since I saw the last slides. We even have a shed that they can put them in the evening to keep they've got a dog over there that's kind of like a coyote here that's very vicious, and they have to put them up at night and everything. One of the things that we've been real successful with is a medical clinic. We started out once a year with Martha. Then we started having it twice a year. Now we're having it quarterly. And our latest goal, Martha and I are getting ready to leave and go over there in a couple of weeks. Our latest goal is to have a full-time nurse practitioner, a PA, somebody there, and have a full-time clinic, maybe like 4 days a week. The Kenya government is stretched so thin that they've stopped 2 other clinics in that region, in that area. So we're looking at the possibility of being able to have a full-time clinic. If we can pull that off, if we can raise enough money to do that, that'll be huge. This slide right here, I apologize, is out of sequence. I guess it's sequence chronologically, but that couple that you saw, those grandparents that you saw in the beginning of the slide presentation, part of what we do is that we remodel and fix dwellings for the people in that community. And those grandparents have passed away. Those kids are, last 10 years there. But this is one of the dwellings that was just cardboard and somebody sleeping on the ground to us remodeling. And all of them have a catch tank. Even though we've got a well, we still have a catch tank. This is our couple that are Bernard's children. He passed
3 years ago.
3 years ago in the middle of COVID. Martha told them to be sure and get started on ivermectin. Martha's is a physician, double boarded physician, but it was backed up and all that we didn't get enough of it to enough people. Martha knew that it would help with COVID, but anyway, Bernard died of some related illnesses due to the COVID deal. On the far right is his son Martin, who is a government auditor and basically has the Bible memorized. The young man next to him is one of our best friends. They just went over several months ago for him to kind of do a gospel meeting and to work with them and do some Bible study. And then there are 2 children, and then there's Rachel to the left, and then Bobby and Billy Clark, and then Rachel. But this is our core couple. They're the ones that kind of coordinate and do everything for us. And so the reports we get back financially and all that and everything are done by a government auditor, plus he works with a law firm, and we get them to sign off on our paperwork. There's no middlemen. They won't, you couldn't pay them anything to do what they're doing. Everything that's contributed or donated to us goes straight to food, clothing, shelter, that type thing. So this is some construction work.
Just to point out, Rachel grew up in the Majinga slum that is one of the biggest slums in Nairobi.
We're going to show you the slum in just a minute
She grew up in that slum.
Where Rachel was raised.
Her mother and 2 brothers and sisters.
This is just one of 100 pictures I have on the baptisms that take place. I mean, it is a very evangelistic church. These are a couple of the preachers that Martin and a couple of the elders have trained there, and they go out to the surrounding areas and preach and teach there. African Christian Hospital recently donated 500 Bibles for us to use there, and so, but anyway, I've got several pictures of the baptisms. It is just, they just all gather around after church. They've got this is terrible, I don't know, like a horse trough or whatever, but they fill it up to do their baptisms and everything. But we're already at like 20-something baptisms just this year. This is Bernard's funeral that he passed away from related illnesses a few years ago, and this was the ceremony. There were people that came from all around the whole community. He became such a great symbol of godliness and just helping. He got the school built, the public school built in the area, and huge, huge funeral for him. Christmas is everything. Christmas is Christmas. They even got a Christmas tree, artificial Christmas tree a few years ago. They turned off all the lights. They just got electric, and they turned on the Christmas tree, and the kids just all went nuts. It's the first they'd seen a Christmas tree in a picture or something like that, and
that was Tommy Bush's idea, by the way, to get a Christmas tree and have.
Well, it was my idea. But Christmas is everything, and it's not just a time of giving out. We try to get a girl and boy a toy, but we try to have a hot meal. We try to have meat, and that's where they give away their clothes and stuff for next year's
They get their school supplies.
What?
They get their school supplies.
School supplies, everything is centered around Christmas. But anyway, it's just a really, really big festive time for everyone. There's some of the stuff that's given out that time, and it's the whole community comes. I mean, the different denominations will come. The people that don't go to church come, and it's just a time for them to share, just basically to share and. Time for that. So anyway, that's just more Christmas pictures. A while ago I told you it's either feast or famine. It's either so dry that you can't, well, you can still spit, but it's pretty dry. But anyway, to it being flooded to where you can't. This is the Nairobi, Kenya, and this is the slum area. And where is it the dot? Is that where she was? That's where her home was?
Her home was to the left.
Her home is to the left, the little red dot.
That's our manna missionary spot is on the bottom, and she's right above that.
Okay. The lady that's boots on the ground there, she and her husband that coordinate our mission work, was raised in this slum. It's one of the largest slums in the world. Bobby and Billy Clark went recently, and I didn't know that all these slides are in there, but this is Bobby Clark, who's a Air Force Academy pilot training guy back in the day. chasing a black mamba, which is just total insanity.
Stupid.
I won't go into all that or anything. And this is him preaching at the different locations, and I'm winding this down, but I want to show you this before we quit. I know I'm going over a little bit. I talked too long at the beginning, but anyway. So we have a new location. Martha, pronounce it for me.
Kwamgumu.
One more time.
Kwamgumu.
This is Kwamgumu. And the neat thing about this, the wonderful thing about this is that the Kikaguni Church has grown and is healthy enough that they are planting this church about 12 miles away. And this is what they were using 3 or 4 years ago for their church time and to do Bible study. And so then we had a person, just I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, who said, I will give you some serious money if you'll put it towards a church of Christ, a church that's beginning and that's starting. And I said, well, you've hit a home, that you're there. So this person has, over the period of the last 4 years, 4 years, started giving some pretty serious money. And so I wanted you to notice that first picture, but now it's just been kind of a transformational process to where it looks like this now with the stone building, and we're getting ready to drill a borehole there in that location. It'll be phenomenal. And last 2 weeks ago, we got enough money raised to drill a borehole for this location. And so the latest thing is growing tilapia, and
That's this year.
very, very successful. And we had to put a net over it to reduce some of the heat in the water, but also to stop some of the theft that was possible. So the new thing now, they've already started drilling a well at that location. So anyway, Martha and I aren't here to raise money. Believe it or not, that's my new job, is to help raise as much money. We're here to say thank you for your congregation, giving us some support the last couple of years, which helps us tremendously. Martha is sitting there thinking, you said you weren't going to go over very long, but the deal is that your dollar in Kenya, in rural Kenya, stretches a long, long ways, and all the support goes directly to helping them and everything. So thank y'all very much for letting us come and say thank you. Just come and say thank you. So